But I think when it comes to Damon and people in the industry, I don't think anybody wants to be in his crosshairs. Like we've all seen with Damon's treatment of Attorney Brown that he can be relentless. And if you're asking my position, I just don't think anybody wants to be bothered like that. Like, you know, who wants to wake up every day and then have Damon Dash with his followers attacking somebody over something that's so simple? So I simply put, I just don't think people want to be bothered.
Hovell-Cox with Sister to Sister 2.0. And today we are here with Edwina Brooks, who is the author of the best-selling 4-part book series Mafia, and who recently won her lawsuit against Dame Dash on a copyright infringement case. Edwina, welcome to Sister to Sister 2.0.
Hello, thank you for having me. Thank you.
So you recently won a lawsuit against Dame Dash and his production company for copyright infringement of Mafia. So could you tell our viewers a little bit of backstory behind Mafia itself, your best-selling book series? Let's start from there.
Okay. So I wrote a book series that started, maybe my first book was released in 2013, and I met Damon in 2015. And upon meeting Damon, my book had already been adapted into a screenplay. I'd already shot a short film, but it wasn't industry ready. It wasn't ready for TV. Okay. So I'm from a small town, and Damon was in the area. So when I found out Damon Dash was in a town with a population of 16,000 people, and I happened to be visiting my mom at the time, I'm like, wait a minute, I need to check this out.
Right.
So it just seemed weird. So I went and I had on my Mafia t-shirt and I had a couple of books and I explained, hey, I've shot this before. I want to do it again so that I can find placement, you know, on TV somewhere because I want my baby to grow.
Right.
And a lady jumped up from the crowd and was like, hey, I read Mafia. So he was like, really?
Okay.
So from that point he was in, he agreed to produce it. And when I was on my way to my seat, he was like, no, wait, I have to direct. And I was like, but I got the director. He's like, well, if I can't direct, I don't want any part. So what do you do,
really?
right? So
So
I'm like, okay. So that's how it started. We were in pre-production within 2 weeks.
No, let me just interrupt real quick. Was there any type of written agreement that was in place regarding the direction, production by his company?
Okay, so there was a written contract given to Damon Dash on July 31st. Okay. Which was a few days before filming. And this is a cautionary tale to creators because I said, hey, Dane, we have this contract. You have to sign it. And he's like, it's good. You know, I'll sign it. It's good. I'll sign it. And, you know, little old trusting me, right? We just went along, trucked along. So filming starts, and I had one of my production assistants take him the contract, and he was kind of upset that she brought him a contract while we were filming. So, long story short, there was a contract submitted before filming with the work for hire provision in place for him as director.
Now, did you have an attorney draw up the contract, or did you draw up the contract yourself?
No, ma'am. Absolutely. I had an attorney, had an entertainment attorney draw up the contract.
Okay. And was Dame represented by an attorney at the time he was presented with the contract?
Damon didn't bring in an attorney until later.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So the production was over, and then there came a time when creatively Damon and I couldn't sit horses. So
now, how long did the production last? What was the time frame for the production?
We filmed for 3 days.
3 days?
3 days. We were in pre-production for about 2 weeks. We filmed for 3 days and went straight into post.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was real
pretty quick.
Literally fast and furious. So once it got to the point that we couldn't sit horses, and I couldn't get a signature on my contract. We were kind of at an impasse. So it was, and I don't remember the name of the hip hop show, but he literally said to me, I'm going on this show, and if you don't give me complete control of your project, I'm going to mention this person I'm working with, I'm going to mention all the other things I'm doing, and I'm not going to mention Mafia.
Wow.
And he
So
literally went on that
sort of a coercion type of scenario.
Yes, you know, as a woman, to deal with that type of intimidating tone, it was very off-putting. You know, I felt bullied.
Right.
So,
that was my next question. Did you feel bullied?
Yes, ma'am. But despite what I was feeling, I knew that it didn't feel right.
Now, was your attorney still involved at this point?
Definitely.
Okay.
So when that happened, I said no. You know, I don't give you complete control of my project. So he literally went on the BET show, and I think that was the one with Snoop Dogg and Master P, the mogul show that came on BET. Okay. And he showed everything that he did in North Carolina except Mafia, because I would not give him control of my project.
And that's where the filming was taking place, in North Carolina.
In North Carolina.
And I remember seeing that show. And you're right, there was no mention of any production of a film by the name of Mafia.
Not at all. Not at all. So after that, Dame sent me a text message terminating himself. So my lawyer sent him an email acknowledgement, and then at that time, Dame brought in counsel.
Okay. Now, how long was that? Back in 2018 that this occurred? This
was in 2015, going into 2016.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Literally for over a year, these two lawyers tried to negotiate this contract to have Damon sign it. A year passed. Never signed it.
Never signed the contract.
Never signed the contract. But in court, my saving grace was, in each iteration of the contract, there was always that work for hire provision. And that was never an item in question by his attorney. He never addressed the work for hire provision.
Okay.
So when he went into court saying, hey, it was okay for me to put this on iTunes, and it was okay for me to put this on Dame Dash Studios because I owned it, you know, even though he didn't sign the contract, it was clear that you're not the dominant author, you don't have ownership, and there was never an intention for me to have you be an owner.
Right. So you decided to file a lawsuit in March of 2019, correct?
Correct.
Were there any
serendipity that happened? I didn't know that I was going to be filing it then. What happened was I saw a gentleman named Josh. Well, a friend of mine sent me a link. And there was a gentleman named Josh Weber suing him for something similar.
But apparently his behavior was the exact same way during your trial, correct?
Yes, and that was what was so astounding. I thought that by us being in a literal federal courtroom, that would help him curb his behavior. But that's when I came to understand it's not something that he can control.
What types of behavior did he exhibit during the trial?
He called people.
What was displayed during the deposition, but can you tell me firsthand what you witnessed during the trial?
Well, okay, so the first thing about the trial is when you see court TV, the people are sitting side by side. In federal court, I was sitting here and he was literally sitting behind me. So I'm hearing all of these verbal assaults. He's lying. That's not true. I never did that. And mind you, he's throwing his hands up in the air and all of this. And I can't see him throw his hands up in the air, but I hear him. And I'm telling my lawyer, like, this is intimidating. Like, I feel uncomfortable.
How did you feel?
I felt uncomfortable. I felt like he was trying to shake me. I felt like he was trying to bully me in the court of law because he thought nobody would stop him.
That is amazing. Even though he was before the judge and the jury and everybody else in the courtroom, he just had no filter, basically.
This was a bench trial. So
it was just a bench trial. Okay.
Right. But he literally had no filter. And there came a point where my judge raised the argument, raised the the problem to the judge. And at the point, the judge hadn't heard it, but he was so loud that I don't know the official term, I'm sorry, but the person that takes the notes during the trial,
the court reporter,
the court recorder was recording his outbursts in the trial transcript. So if you read the transcript, you can see where he's literally spitting out stuff during people's testimony. So there came a point when the judge heard it, and he got very upset. Like,
and
you
his
sit
lawyer
there like a
wasn't
bump on the
there
log, and you don't say anything.
His lawyer wasn't there, instructing his client not to have these outbursts, not to exhibit this type of behavior during the trial?
His lawyer only said something to him once the judge instructed him to. I mean, it was obvious his lawyer had no control over him at all. But that's clear through the deposition, up to the trial.
Right.
No control.
Well, that is amazing. Were you all involved in any type of depositions before your attorney filed your lawsuit in federal court in New York?
No, I was not. No.
Okay. So this basically, the lawsuit was filed, normal course of a lawsuit, and then you went straight to trial, basically.
Yes, now, and maybe I misunderstood your question, but there was a deposition.
There was a deposition in your case.
Between Damon and my lawyer. Now, I was never deposed by Damon's counsel, but attorney Chris Brown, who took those verbal assaults like a complete gentleman, he is to be commended. But I will say that anytime there was a barrage of verbal assaults, something had happened in court. And rather than Damon say, hey, because I won a summary judgment for trademark infringement in September of 2019.
Okay.
I didn't publicize it. So instead of him saying, oh, I just got my what handed to me in trial, it was, oh, his suits are ugly, his breath stinks. But the fact of the matter was, he had just lost a trademark infringement piece of my case.
Wow, and that was never brought up in the media at all.
It wasn't, and I was very quiet, and I've been very hesitant to speak because I've seen how Damon has bullied Josh Weber. I've seen how Damon has bullied a number of people on social media.
Absolutely.
And, I'm married. My husband's in the military. I don't doubt his ability to protect me, but at the same time, I did not want to be assaulted on social media by standing up for myself. So I chose to take the quiet victory and remain quiet. But at the same time, I want other filmmakers, I want other creatives to understand, one, what your rights are, and to be careful when you go into situations like this and the paperwork isn't signed prior to your beginning filming.
Absolutely. I am so glad that what made you decide to come forth with your story and your side of the story?
I think it's because with the whole, I'm not going to call it the hold, with the hold that Damon has on the media and with the ways that some of the story was portrayed even after the case was over.
Right.
Like when I first came forward saying that he stole my film, I remember Global Grind calling me a scorned writer.
Okay.
And I felt like, one, you're marginalizing my issue.
Absolutely.
And two, you're making people just dismiss everything that's happened to me. And then, with Damon, these frivolous lawsuits, bubblegum this and bubblegum this, when in fact, he's exhibiting bubblegum behavior.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
do you think that this would have occurred if you were a man?
I think if I were a man, he would have assaulted me as he did Josh Weber.
Right.
I think the only reason Damon hasn't come for me on the internet is because I'm a woman. And if he were to do that, that would kill the whole invest in women platform he's standing on right now.
And is that one of the reasons why you chose to go with Dame? Because you felt that as a woman that you were going to be empowered by Dame and his company, that his vision of empowering women fit what you were trying to accomplish by turning Mafia into a film?
Absolutely. I saw, like many of your viewers, I'm sure, the Breakfast Club interview where he was talking about investing in women. And then shortly after, he shows up in North Carolina. So it's like, how do all of these things just line up? Because at the time, we were stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. and I just happened to be going home because my husband was going to training.
Right.
So all of these things are just kind of falling into place. So I really felt like he was a godsend. And maybe in a way he was, but it was more as a lesson to be learned.
Right. You felt that you were going to be protected, but you were anything but protected.
Exactly. And I think he protected me from everyone else. He protected me from the crew overcharging me. He protected me from anybody on the outside. However, he had his own motives. Like he, invited artists that he knew to come shoot videos on my set, and he never discussed it with me.
Wow. Now, was he paying for the production of the movie?
Not a dime. So when I first approached Damon, I told Damon I had $10,000 because I thought we could do something really small.
Right.
With his notoriety, I thought, he could get some help and I could do this thing for $10,000. But I ended up spending over $49,000
of your own money.
Of my own money.
And Dame Dash didn't contribute one dime.
Not a penny.
And then wanted to claim an ownership interest in your film.
Yes, ma'am.
That's amazing.
So, yes, I ended up having to, I think what happened was, and back to Josh Weber. So like once I started it was on iTunes, I realized I could dispute it. Like I say, hey, this is my intellectual property. So I did that because, I'm 49K, in the hole with this film.
Right.
I just paid attorney fees to negotiate this contract for a full year. So it's like, okay, we're working people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So how am I supposed to get another lawyer to pay thousands of dollars to take him back to court?
Absolutely.
So when I heard about the Josh Weber case, I shot him a DM on Instagram. I was like, hey, the same thing happened to me. I hope you can get some resolution.
Right.
He's like, you're not talking to my lawyer. I'm like, no, not at all. So I just really reached out to be a support to Josh Weber. I had no idea that this would come of it. And I'm thankful.
Absolutely. So you were just recently awarded a $300,000 judgment against Dame Dash and his production company.
Yes, ma'am.
And your attorney intends to collect every penny of that judgment.
He does. He does. And I think, and one thing I will say about Attorney Chris Brown is, like, it took a while for him to help me understand that I had been harmed.
Absolutely.
Because this entire process, I was like, oh my goodness, like, oh, Damon, poor thing, like, poor Tink, like the whole thing. It was like, I felt sorry for him. Right. And I think it was the one conversation where I was going through my phone and I literally found a picture of Damon holding my son.
Wow. So that's how close that you two have become over this period of time. And how do you feel that somebody who was basically involved in your life to that degree could turn on you the way he did?
That's when it got real for me. That's when I was ready to act. That's when my feeling changed from poor Damon to wait a minute. You're going to hold my son and take food out of his mouth at the same time. And that's when it's like, wait a minute. My first, like, you only make certain vows in your life, right? One is to, like, the husband, and the second one is to God to take care of your child.
Absolutely.
Or however it falls. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not doing right by my child by not properly providing if I don't seek, the proper vindication or restitution for what's happened to me. Absolutely. And that picture of him literally holding my son.
That was the trigger for you.
That was it.
That's an amazing story. So let's just backtrack for a second. Okay. Dame put what had become of the production of your movie. He actually put it up on a platform without your knowledge and permission, correct?
Correct.
When did you find out that he had done that?
There's an actress that plays Dee in Mafia. Her name's Sadia McCrae. Great friend of mine now. She called and she was like, "Hey Dee," "Hey Dee," that's how she talks to me. She was like, "Do you know that Damon put your film on Dame Dash Studios?"
Wow.
And I was like, "What?" Because at this point there was no communication between us except through our lawyers.
Right.
So I still think that's a conversation that should have been had between our lawyers. So I even subscribed. Like I paid $9.99 to see this myself.
So you paid to see your movie on Dame Dash's platform that you never gave him permission to put there in the first place.
I couldn't believe it.
That is just unbelievable.
I couldn't believe it. When you have some type of moral fiber, and I think one of the most challenging things for me is you expect the people that you deal with to have the same.
Absolutely.
So the fact that that happened, I had a hard time accepting that because who does that? So
right.
Once I saw it for myself, it's like, okay, how do I get this down? Like, what happens from here?
Right.
And then when I found out, because it was on that platform, it carried over to iTunes, that's when I finally had a bit of a remedy, because I knew if I would have challenged it with iTunes, it would have to come down.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened. And that's when I realized he even lied to iTunes and went as far as to say he owned the production, he had a copyright for the piece. Wow. And it's like, I'm from North Carolina. My uncle would always say, a lie don't care who tell it. Right. And that's what I kept hearing in my head, because you literally told these people you own this. And I just, that's unbelievable. Trigger for like, this is the type of person you're dealing with.
And then you never probably would have suspected that to come from a celebrity such as Dame Dash, who's worked with Jay-Z, had a company with Jay-Z, has been in the industry forever. That's probably the last thought that ever crossed your mind when you originally agreed to have him help you with your project.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So most recently, like, because I want my story to be told, because like even in reading, like most recently, you just asked me about that, but in most recently in reading my story, even in TMZ, the article was so dismissive. Oh, Damon says he's going to appeal it. But do you realize I don't think people understand what Damon is going to have to do to appeal this. And I don't think he's financially able. If he can't pay $2,400, how could he post the bond necessary to appeal this case?
Right.
So, I don't think these media outlets are thinking through the things that they're putting out here. So because I want my story told, I decided to write a tell-all from my position.
Okay.
Because I think that's the only way that I'm going to be heard.
Absolutely. And I commend you for doing that. I commend you for having the courage to tell your story, and especially to sharing your story with us on Sister 2.0. Like you said, you felt bullied. You felt used, you felt betrayed, all of these emotions. And you said at one point you felt scared to even come forth to tell your story because you didn't want to endure the bullying on social media that Dame has displayed in depositions that have gone viral on social media. Mm-hmm. So Edwina, I commend you for having the courage and the strength to come forward with your story. It's an important story and it needs to be heard. Like you said, by others who are out there trying to create content, books, movies, TV series, whatever. It's important for creators not to feel afraid to trust the people that are going to help turn their dreams and their visions into reality. So I commend you for coming forth with your story.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening. Like, I felt for so long that people just didn't want to hear it. You know, like I literally met DJ Envy briefly, and I said, hey, you know, I just worked with Damon Dash, and he stole my film. And he literally said, you on your own with that one? And took the picture with me and kept going. So I'm like, nobody wants to hear me. And it just made me cower even further, you know, into this little hole. But thank you for listening. You know, thank you for giving me a platform to speak to other creatives, to just kind of give them this cautionary tale. And, you know, I would just say to anybody, like, you know, don't walk in my footsteps as far as being afraid to share, because that's the only way that you're going to get some kind of justice.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And like you said, it's so important for creators to be protected and have their material protected so this type of thing doesn't happen to them. So Edwina, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And I pray that you continue to stay safe and blessed, you and your family.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.